Hey, I hope you're having an amazing day today, and thank you for joining me on this podcast. So, have you ever gone through something in life where you get into that slippery slope in your mind, like, how is this going to end? You become very fearful and you think the worst case scenario, and it just continues to replay in your mind, and you just can't get out of your head, and you feel like you're just struggling. I know I have. I think we've all been there at some point in our life. And that's what I want to talk about today is how can we shift our perspective to realize that maybe it's actually working for us. And it can be really hard sometimes we're in the thick of it to see it for anything that could potentially be beneficial. But I'm going to give you some tools in this podcast that you can use to move yourself in a direction to recognize some things that are serving you rather than feeling like you're a victim of circumstance. So I just want to share a story. A few years ago, my husband and I were building our house, and we had a construction loan. So for anyone who knows about building houses, a construction loan is very expensive as far as the interest. So it was about 13% interest on that. And you have about a year by the time you sign it to switch it over to a conventional mortgage. So we were building our house. It was a complete disaster. I won't even get to the details of that, but we get to the point where we're finished up on our project. We're living in our house. We're ready to transfer over to our conventional mortgage. And this was right when the pandemic was starting. And we both got furloughed from our jobs. I lost my job completely, and my husband went down to a part-time job. So I was working full-time and a part-time job. I lost my complete full-time job, and my husband lost half of his full-time job. And this was literally right around the time when we were supposed to be signing our mortgage. And so for anyone who knows about mortgages, you have to have a proof of income when you do this. Like, they will not let you sign that without the proof of income. So we end up losing our jobs the week after we signed our conventional mortgage. And by the grace of God, the timing just worked out well. And then we were able to get our conventional mortgage. But it did not make things easy. We had a 9-month-old son at the time. We just got our house. We had limited income at that time. It was scary. Did not know what was going to happen. And of course, everything around the pandemic was awful too at that time, because there was a lot of fear going on. And we all know someone who was deeply impacted by that. So there was a lot going on at that time. And so I'm now going from working full-time and a part-time job to now being at home with my 9-month-old son. And, for many on the outside, it may be like, oh, what a great time to really cherish that time with your son. But at that time, it was really just survival mode. I was fearful. I thought of everything that could go wrong. Like, if I can't figure out how to get an income right now, like, we just got a brand new mortgage and we have all these expenses, we have a baby, like, it's a scary time to go through that on top of everything else that was scary at that time. And so that moment of pause was initially really scary, because I'm thinking, like, this is the end. Like, what if we can't make our mortgage payment? Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? Like, how could this happen? Right? Like, we had just gone through 2 years of construction, and it was just like the worst 2 years of our lives, because it was just complete stress for 2 years. We finally moved into our new house. And I remember thinking, like, I can't even enjoy this right now. Like, I was so looking forward to, like, getting to that moment. Like, I dreamed of that moment of getting to our new house and finally being able to live in it without working on it, because it had literally consumed our life for 2 full years. And then now we finally move in, and, like, I can't even enjoy it because of everything that's going on, and just the worry. So my whole mindset was thinking about, like, what else could go wrong? How is this working against me? How could this happen to me? That was everything that was playing in my head. And the big transition for me, and I want to share this because this was such an eye-opener for me, in that I recognize that I was just looking at it as if it were the end, that this is the end of my smooth life. This is the end of the financial comfort to be able to pay for this house. This is the end of being able to enjoy this house. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, thinking of everything that was fearful, especially after all of what we had gone through to get into it. So my whole mindset was just wrapped around the negativity and thinking, like, why did this happen to me? And that was the mindset. Why did this happen to us? And so a huge transition in being able to move forward and not allow that to paralyze you is recognizing that, is this the end or is this beginning? And now in hindsight, I recognize that was only the beginning for me. And fast forward several years, it was that moment of pause, that moment where I had a moment to reflect and look at my life and kind of take stock in what was going on in my life that allowed me to change complete directions of what I was doing. I started my company at that point. I recognized that I had so much more to give and that I was being stifled by everything that I was doing in that moment. And it really became such a catalyst. Then that pain and that everything I felt at that moment and had experienced for years prior, and just that unrest within my heart and feeling like I'm not where I want to be, nothing feels right, nothing was jiving. I had a moment to reflect on, this is not what I want for my life. And it really became such a huge catalyst for change. And so even though in that moment, I thought it was the end, I recognize now that I'm removed from it, that truly was the beginning. It really was such a blessing that all that happened, because it was a force to move me in the direction that I was meant to be in. And so I want to share that message, because if you're going through something right now, you're feeling like you're struggling, you're in that dark place where I was, where I felt like everything was working against me. I know when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see it for anything other than what it is. And it's hard to really remove yourself enough to realize that it could be useful for you. But so it's okay to process that. It's okay to feel the way you do in that moment. But if you get a moment to step away just the tiniest bit and recognize how this could be your new beginning, that is the gift in whatever you're going through. And so a big catalyst for recognizing, is this the end or is this the beginning, are the questions that we ask ourselves. So when we think it's the end, we tend to ask questions that are like, why does this happen to me? Why does this always happen to me? Why is this always like coming down on me? Why can't I escape this? What's going to happen next? Oh, here we go again. Like, these are the things that replay in our minds. But if we can switch that dialogue to where the answers of the questions we ask can move us in a direction and be more positive in propelling us forward, then now we can start looking at it as the beginning. So some questions we can ask ourselves is, what do I need to learn from this? What can I learn from this? And what's going on? How is this serving me? And that's going to be a really hard one to answer when you're in the thick of it, but just asking yourself and sitting with it is so important. So even if you don't have an answer in this moment, just ask yourself subconsciously, how is this serving me? And your brain and your mind will process that in a different way versus, why is this happening to me? Because when we recognize that this in some way is moving you in the direction that you're authentically meant to be in, now we can embrace it. And now we can recognize that it is a stepping stool to a greater life for yourself and where you're destined to be. So that's a huge one. And another big one is, how is this my new beginning? So again, it's really hard when you're in the thick of it to ask these questions and have answers, and that is okay. So if you're really in the thick of a struggle right now, it's okay if you don't have answers to these, but give yourself the gift of just asking these questions and sit on them. Just sit on them. If you have no answers, that's okay. But just asking yourself these questions instead of, why is this happening to me, will be such a huge catalyst for allowing your brain to figure out how this is moving you in the direction that you're destined to be in, and how this can be a stepping stone rather than a hole that you're stuck in. So I wanted to share that, because moving forward to where I am today and looking back on where I was then, I recognize that that was not my end. That was just the beginning. And I'm so grateful for that time. And when I was in the middle of it, it was really hard to see that. But when you can fast forward your life and see it from a different perspective, you realize that some of the hardest things you go through become the biggest gifts to you. And that every hard thing that you're put in life is a catalyst for change. And it is a catalyst for giving you a better life and a better existence and a better reality. And if you can start asking yourselves questions to figure out what that is and what that lesson is and what that gift is, now you can start recognizing that you have a new beginning, not an end. So I hope that serves you. Again, if you found value in this, please share it with someone who could also benefit from this. And thank you again for spending your precious time with me.